Hello, Internet. I'm just going to jump right in, and today I want to talk about the Olympics because I am getting so many notifications and advertisements as I'm watching content on YouTube and other content platforms talking about how the Olympics are upon us. And the idea of the Olympics is a really cool concept. The idea of countries coming together, no matter what's going on in the world, and joining in something that connects viewers across the globe to cheer on their countries, and something that is really wholesome is such a fabulous idea. And the idea of the things that a global sport can bring to us is something that is very valuable. And I will always cherish my childhood memory of watching young Tara Lipinski win her gold medal, and just the look on her face and how young she was, and how it made me feel like that even really, really young people could accomplish anything they put their mind to. You know, the Olympics are special. They are something that we all enjoy. But of course, they're actually quite sussy as well. And so that's why I want to talk about them, because things that are wonderful are also things that we can improve upon and make even better. And I think that in practice, a lot of the things that the Olympics or the Olympic Committee has done does not necessarily live up to the promise of what it really wants to be. So back in the day, let's go all the way back to Hitler, because that's super fun, right? But back in the day, he actually was the leader who decided that the Olympic Games should be a massive spectacle. So it took it from just the idea of all these countries coming together to play games, and he actually already had concentration camps at that point. So we started real early on the Olympics committee being a little sussy. So essentially, he made it into a huge propaganda thing, made it into a huge spectacle, and then basically he turned all the future Olympics into these massive spending pits for the countries that participate. And the cost of the 2028 games that will be held in LA is projected to be $6.9 billion. And we've been promised so many times that when Olympic Games are held in an area, that they will bring in tourism and it'll help the economy, and that new infrastructure will be created that will then, help the civilians who live there in the future. But very often that's not at all what has happened. Here, let me try and really quick make sure I haven't missed anything. Someone's saying that there aren't people here. That's because all the hey, follow me, all that stuff still feels weird to me. So I just jump in and start talking, and then we can say the things I already said later, because I'm here to talk about the actual stuff. So if we go back to even in 1968, recently they've reopened an investigation into this massacre that took place 10 days before the Olympic Games, when there were a ton of student protesters and a ton of civilians. And at the time they're 4 people died. Now the range is between 4 and 3,000 people killed. And then there were thousands of students that were beaten, that were disappeared. It was quite a blight on their history. And part of the reason that they were wanting to control all this unrest is because they're about to have these Olympic Games and have the eyes of the world on them. So instead of handling this in a way that actually does shine a light, because whenever the Olympic Games end up going and getting critiqued for choosing a different country that has human rights abuses, they're well, we're shining a light, and then the whole world will see, and it'll make it better. But of course, that's not necessarily what we've actually seen, because if we look at the Beijing Olympics that were held both in 2020 and in, let me make sure I get the year right, because it's always the years, 2008, those ones, the first time we were already hearing about the human rights abuses and the treatment of the Uyghur Muslims in the area. And then after that, we have these brutal crackdowns on protests in Hong Kong. And then we're critiquing this Olympic Committee for choosing a place that is actively engaging in human rights abuses, and they go, what, we're just a sports organization. So it's like, which one are you? Are you going to be a sports organization, or are you going to be shining a light and expecting countries to live up to, this spotlight that's being put on them? So these ones, that's a word. All right, people going back and forth. So anyways, it is very interesting that the Olympic Games have historically kind of ignored a lot of human rights abuses all the way back to when, it was Hitler and on forwards. So now we're looking at Paris getting ready to host the Olympic Games. And it's like, thank God they already have infrastructure, so we're not going to run into a lot of the problems that we've run into with other Olympic Games that were hosted in areas where there was massive waste, where there's forced labor, where just terrible things have been done. So I was thinking this is a much improved option for where the Olympic Games can be held. Then I find out they're going to have AI that is going to be surveilling the area. And AI is still a pretty new technology and is wrong often. And what we've seen is when different places have put in new laws for the Olympics, they very rarely remove these laws after the fact. So the concern for these next games is that the AI that is going to be implemented for increased surveillance in Paris is going to stick around. And AI policing is something I'm not super comfortable with personally. So if we look at Australia back in the day, they actually changed a law to allow the military to be used against civilians for the time that the games were going on, and then they did not remove that either. So that is a very concerning law to stay on the books. I mean, I wouldn't have ever wanted that to be something that they did, but a lot of times new laws are introduced as just a way to make the Olympics safer, but then they don't leave the books. If we look at the last time the Olympics were held in LA, we can see that homelessness was criminalized during that time. They criminalized sleeping on benches, sleeping in your car, sleeping on the streets. And this was supposed to be for the games, but of course that stuck around, and we're dealing with such an intense homelessness crisis right now. And combine that with the crisis that we're having with, over penalizing people and throwing people in prison for things like, sleeping on the streets, let alone the state of our prison systems. These are relics from previous games that have made our societies worse. Let men compete in the Women's Olympics. Okay. I do think it's an interesting concept to combine men and women's sports events, but I think that the way that they have it broken down right now works for me personally. So we're also looking at all sorts of other costs for these Olympic Games. So we've had massive amounts of money that's just been poured into preparing areas for the games. Like if we look at South Korea, they spent $100 million to build a stadium that they used 4 times, which is absolutely insane to me. And then they started tearing it down. So it's like these promises of creating new infrastructure and saying, oh, well, the local people will benefit from it, very often fall through. There's a transit line that's being worked on for the next Olympics in LA that is not slated to be done before the Olympics, and it concerns me that it could be just another one of those abandoned projects that the Olympics seem to leave in their wake, which is just absolutely insane. And then you add to it that there's a massive amount of corruption and bribery that has been known to occur with these Olympic officials. And we're watching Paris officials that are being investigated for embezzling funds. And we're looking at many, many areas that, even if it's not official embezzlement, that spend just bukus of money and gifts on these officials to be able to get the Olympic Games to be hosted in their area. And very often the only people that are benefiting from them are the people at the very top, are the people who were involved in the committees, are the politicians, and very often the actual population suffers greatly. So what we're looking at now is that the Olympic Games are also getting more and more unsustainable, which is very interesting because now, with the way that global warming has been going on, there are fewer and fewer places that are even able to host the Winter Olympics, so they're kind of killing themselves off in a way. We are seeing people who are, or countries that are using tons and tons of their water resources to make fake snow. But then at the same time, if we look at the last 2 games, they dumped 7 million tons of carbon into the atmosphere, just the last 2 games alone. So by having these massive spectacles that don't really benefit the population, that don't provide infrastructure, that are hurting our environment, that for the most part they are televised, it would be so much better for the longevity of the games as well for us to pare down the spectacle just a little bit. I'm not saying give up the games, but broadcast them. Maybe don't have quite as many spectators come from all over to see it. You know, most people watch them on the television anyways, and that alone would really help with the environmental impact. And we're also looking at how different places, like like in Sochi, they were like, we're going to have a zero waste games. We're going to be environmentally friendly. We're going to make sure that this is something that is good for everyone. And then they actually cut down like 8,000 acres of the Sochi National Forest for construction, and then they actually triggered landslides and long-term ecological damage, long-term soil and water and air pollution. It was an absolute mess for the environment, and that was with them paying lip service to how they were going to make sure that they were more environmentally friendly, which is a totally wild thing. Then we also see that now the IOC is responding and saying that they're going to try and actually plant some forests in areas. So I am hopeful that as we talk about this, we will have them try to do things in a more environmentally friendly way. So they've promised to plant these forests in Mali and Senegal, but we have yet to see that come to fruition. And with their history, I remain cautiously optimistic on that promise. So there has been some pushback, and thank God for that, because the impact of these games is really hurting them long term, and they are something that could be a symbol of international cooperation. Okay. People are just going back and forth about women's athletics. What is a teal swan? I have no idea what that is. The exact law? Ooh, let me look it up. For the Australia military. I don't have the exact law written down, but that was, yeah. Let me get the exact law for you. That's fair. Or I have no idea. Could somebody actually look that up for me? That would be super great. Because I did not have anything open and my internet is being very slow. Hey, Ollie, yeah. Can you look up the Australian law, please? So you can like the exact law?
Which one?
So they okayed that the military could be used for like crowd control for the Olympics. If I could just get like the detail on it. Yes, thank you. So we're working on that. Okay, yeah. Today the comments are a little bit off topic, but we can go off topic. That's totally fine too. I'm talking to my sibling and bestie. It's just easier than trying to keep up with this too. But basically, right now, we're looking at so much unfinished infrastructure that's been left in the wake of the Olympics. We're looking at increased surveillance. The last time that the Olympics came to LA, the cops actually bought a bunch of like militarized weapons and equipment. So that was totally bad for, that particular issue that we're dealing with. In LA, the militarized police is something that we're dealing with on a daily basis, and it's quite depressing, and the Olympics made it worse. So a lot of these laws that they present as ways to go ahead and make things safer for the international visitors end up being things that have long-term ripple consequences. What are they going to do if the river isn't clean enough? Build a pool. So what military, I don't know what river you're talking about, but there has been a lot of river pollution, illegal landfills, I mean, on and on and on. What military stuff have they used? So the LA cops bought like new weapons, like new guns, as part of the funds that they were given for the Olympics. So that is something that is a very, concerning thing, because we already know the LA police are nightmares and are way over militarized. So it's definitely something that has been used against the civilian population before. So I just was wanting to point out that while the Olympics are so important for our population, to have something that makes you feel connected to people in other countries and everything, it is also super, super important for us to do it in a more responsible way. And considering how incredibly costly it's looking like it's going to be, $6.9 billion is absolutely insane. And that's what the LA Olympics are projected to cost. So there are a lot of things that we should probably do with $6.9 billion before we try and put a spectacle on television. So that's something that is highly concerning. Would you like to get rid of police protection in your city? No, not at all. I think that police, but I would like them to be reformed in a big way, because we do way over militarize the police, and we can see in a lot of other countries where there are police that don't even carry weapons. Now, I'm not advocating that, but there are many ways to de-escalate. Hey, thank you, I love you so much. Okay, wait, what does that mean? Okay,
the highlighted text, that's what I got. I don't know.
Oh, this is really deep legalese. Okay, the DSGL. Okay, I'm gonna have to get deeper into this at another time, because that's very deep legalese.
Sorry.
Okay. No, you're good. Here you go. Lovely. So, anyways, that is something that, that we need to be aware of, because we're spending a lot of money on this, and homelessness is such a problem right now. And instead of criminalizing homelessness, we need to actually deal with that before we spend all of that time going and all of that money building up infrastructure programs that aren't actually going to help the civilians. So I don't know what you're talking about with ad shares and stuff. Take what for granted. All right. So I just wanted to go over that. I also, just while I'm here, I really wanted to point out something. I'm going to skip topics now, because people are not seeming to like this, and this is just something else I want to talk about because I came across it. So we recently found out that in Israel and in Gaza, they are obviously going over some really horrifying new discoveries that Israeli forces are torturing their detainees. And we have also found out that Israel has about 80 different programs that are full-on propaganda, managing our perception of the conflict, that are active in America and in Europe. And I seem to remember when there was like some very dodgy evidence of of any sort of Russian propaganda, that everyone freaked out about it. But now we have 80 like very active programs. They're calling them Voices of Israel. And this propaganda is just being completely overlooked, and it's something that nobody's really taking all that seriously at all. And it is making it quite interesting because we have these politicians who very much, are unwilling to criticize Israel. They're afraid to, and don't understand that it is possible to share that it's okay to criticize a government and you're not criticizing the people of the government, and it is possible to walk that line. But because we have, AIPAC is very, very strong, and we're seeing that AIPAC has poured all of this money into the campaign against Jamal Bowman, just because he decided to say that Israel is committing a genocide and that they should not be doing the things that they're doing. But we're hearing about just like these absolutely awful torture programs right now, over 40 of them that have been cataloged, including having dogs actually rape detainees, which is just awful. And this is like Hitlerite level stuff. This is not okay. And we have politicians that are so terrified to talk about it because there's so much money in the system. So it is absolutely wild to me that we see proof of solid propaganda that does make, it difficult to talk about this subject. And it does make it so that many, many people are not able to enter into the discourse because they've had so much propaganda thrown at them. And it's just not taken seriously by our politicians or media at all. Okay. I believe that news would be false, but after October 7th, stay out of their business. So I do, actually, there was another bombshell report that let us know that it's likely that they actually knew that an attack like that was coming and wanted essentially an excuse to be able to take more land. And that is what has happened. So, obviously, October 7th was not okay. And I don't know anybody who's really saying that it is. But I don't think that you can take an event and say that it is literally okay to do any level of atrocity just because something really bad happened. How would I deal with homelessness? So I would deal with homelessness with a multi-pronged approach. Homelessness is caused by different things. Homelessness can be caused by drug addiction. It can also be caused by mental illness. It can also be caused by the economic climate. And it can also be caused by skyrocketing housing prices that is impacted by AI. So each of those things, among other things, need to be dealt with in different ways. We should have state-sponsored addiction services. It should be very easy to check yourself into a rehab with or without insurance. The fact that you need insurance to go to rehab, you don't need to put another stumbling block in the way of people that are already struggling, this is already a very difficult decision to make. And I don't think we need to demonize that addiction is something that is causing homelessness, because if you are already homeless, I definitely think it'd be easier to say, screw it, I'll do drugs, I'm miserable anyways. So I think that heaping judgment on these people and just assuming that these people are not worth trying to help is a mistake that is made a lot, and I think it's an easy out for people. I also think that, it's quite important to have mental health care available, also provided by the government. If we're going to pour billions of dollars into hosting the Olympics, not to go back to that, over $6 billion, then why don't we use that to provide mental health services to people? Because, if somebody is having a mental health crisis and we don't have really good teams available that can go out and help intervene. I know it's definitely a topic to debate because it's easy to fall into the concern where you don't want to be forcing people against their will, but also if somebody is having a break from reality, at that point, I don't think that they're exercising much free will either. So I am okay with the idea of a temporary hold to help somebody at least not be experiencing such a severe case of psychosis. And I think that right now our mental health care is not really fabulous. A lot of places, even if you check in voluntarily, they just watch you for a little bit and send you back on your own. We need to work hard to actually try and deal with these crises. Also, AI is being used to jack up the rates of rentals and housing and things like that. So that is something that can force people out of homes when they simply can't afford them anymore. There's people that I've worked with that are very hardworking that were homeless while working a full schedule just because housing has become so costly. So there's different types of homelessness. There's a lot of invisible homeless who might not be the people who are laying on the street corner, but you do have people that maybe they're couch surfing from couch to couch, maybe they're sleeping in their car, maybe they just can't make it in the economic climate. And then if you do end up losing your job because you lose your housing and you can't shower, or you have trouble getting a job because you can't provide an address, because whenever you go to get a job, they ask you what your address is. That makes it so much more difficult to be able to rejoin society. So there's so many more barriers to be able to escape homelessness once you do fall into it. Oh yeah, your belongings can be stolen, and that can make things more difficult. If your wallet is stolen, then you don't have an ID. If your social security card was in there, you don't have that. So then there's people who want to work and then are struggling to even get those documents. So that's a concern, and it can be hard to get your documents back because a lot of times if you want to get, your ID, they're asking, bring in a birth certificate and social security card. And it's like, well, if everything's gone, it's very, very difficult. Free and accessible mental health services would be a great idea. I don't know why we don't. The reason why we don't is because it's a huge industry and they're making a lot of money. And so if it's free and easily accessible, that is a industry that lobbies our Congress that is going to lose massive money. And right now, politicians spend about 70 or 80% of their time just talking to lobbyists, and that's why most of the things that are passed are things that corporations want and not what the people want. So there are many, many ways that we can deal with these issues that face us. And unfortunately, because the people that are making these decisions, whether it is deciding who, will host the Olympic Games, or whether we're going to provide services that our citizens severely need, or whether we're going to help people's daily quality of life, it is very, very unlikely that these decisions are being made by people that have the interests of the average person at heart instead of the interests of our corporations. And that is very, very difficult. Oh, thank you for liking the earrings. Appreciate it. I love a good sale. I got them on a super sale. The mental health industry makes money. That's not my experience. I see the cost as the barrier. Right, the cost is the barrier to getting care. The mental health industry, and a lot of times it's not the providers that are the problem. A lot of times it's the insurance companies, and they are literally just adding costs on top without adding any sort of value to it. So it is quite interesting that we have this industry that is essentially a middleman, and the only way they make money is by denying care. And there's so many scenarios where we have seen people who were denied care and then went and committed suicide because they were not sick and depressed enough, things like that. This happens all the time, and it's just not helpful at all. And if you talk to mental health care providers, or really doctors in general, they spend a lot of their time wasting it fighting with insurance companies who add absolutely no value. Social issues is an industry, even racism. That is so true. That's so true. And that's why politics matter, even though politics are really annoying sometimes. They impact literally everyone. And the way that things are set up, it's all interconnected. You know, we look at how people are not making enough money, and we see how prisoners are being used to work in jobs for 12 cents a day. It's all connected. So I am going to sign off. I really just wanted to pop on for a second. I streamed really recently, and I wanted to make sure I talked about the Olympics. So I hope y'all have a lovely evening, and I will see you later.